is Everyday Expertise, and I'm Angela, and I'm here today with Eduardo Sajgalik. He's the community strategist and co-founder of Watcha Games, a new studio making massively collaborative games for streamer viewer communities. Their latest title in development is called Sea Raiders. Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Well, we're all managing. So, how did you get started in game development?
Actually, I finished my degree in chemistry back in the United Kingdom. Must have been 10 years or 11 years now, I guess. And was looking for work, right? Like after you graduate, you're looking for work, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. One of the jobs that eventually came up was at Jagex, which is a studio in the UK who does RuneScape, and they had a role for, at the time, localized player support. So essentially doing player support in French. So it was like a combination of customer service and community development slash management. Which was actually 10 to 11 years ago was relatively a quite new field actually for the community side of things. So I passed the interview, went there, moved to the UK from France. And one of the things when I was there is I learned very quick a lot of things at Jagex. It was like a place where there was a lot of people that came from the start, like from 2000, 2001, and it was a web browser game. So it's a very different take on gaming as we know it in general, right? It's not like a console title that you ship. So it meant constant development. It meant thinking outside the box. It meant interacting with people in different ways. I learned a lot about like the global state of games because I was in a team that took care of languages. So I was like, oh, so this is a Brazilian market. Okay, this is how people interact in like Denmark, for example. So it was a good place to learn. Eventually went a lot more into the community side of things, partly because a lot of us in the team wanted it, and also they realized that there was just more value for us doing the community side of things rather than the customer support side. So they try to shift us as much as possible into the community side. So I was there for a couple of years, and I kind of got into game development that way, like just applying for a job in something that at the end of the day, like I didn't do I don't have a marketing background. It's just that I had reasonable communication skills. For this job was relevant. I was bilingual, but I'm also trilingual. I speak Spanish as well. So being able to use kind of those native communication skills plus the fact that I traveled and have a little bit of an international perspective. And when I was younger, when I was 15, 16, I actually ran a lot of events locally. So small tournaments or just gatherings of people. And I ran events online as well. When I played Phantasy Star Online, there were like guilds. So I organized events for the guilds. And that's the stuff that kind of got me into gaming because all those random things probably gave me an edge over the other candidates. And that's how I ended up in game development, or all those little things that I accumulated over the years that weren't linked to my degree. And then I just applied and had a recruiter that was quite positive once I insisted on the calls. The first call was whatever, but when I called again and again, the recruiter was actually, was motivated. So that's how I ended up in games, was seeing the position and going pretty strongly with the recruiter for it.
And now you have your own studio. Why did you and your co-founder decide to start your own studio?
It's funny because I moved to Montreal in 2016. And when I first came, I loved it. I decided about 2 or 3 days I was going to move here from the UK. I'm Canadian. That helps a lot, the move as well, just to be clear. But essentially, one of the things I found with Montreal is decent standard of living for very little. So you get to live reasonably well. You don't have to chase work all the time, which meant I could live off savings for a bit, which is important for creativity, I find, because you're not forced to take work that you don't want to do fundamentally.
It's true.
A lot of creative people in the video game space locally because the first time I came, I think it was like the second day I was here, I went to an evening, and it was like people like Jason Kim, who did Children of Zodiacs, Tanya Short, behind obviously Kid Fox Studios, and Richard Atlas was there as well, which was Robot Chicken, not Robot Chicken, Ultimate Chicken Horse. and all of and all of them did well, but they were like talking the same professional evening. So I was very impressed with like kind of the quality that we had that was accessible locally. But I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to do a studio because I wanted to offer kind of, I saw these indie studios and I thought there was an opportunity to offer strategies for community development, which is true, I think. especially nowadays, it's becoming much more important.
Yeah.
But one of the things was I didn't want to do a studio because it wasn't that I didn't have a game idea. It's just there wasn't the execution behind it, so I wasn't driven to create one.
Right.
Uh, but one of the things that's relevant for the studio I created is even I remember one of my first conversations that night, which was about talking about Twitch plays Pokemon and trying to think about things like the very old football, like football from the medieval times, where you'd have two villages and miles apart, and they'd have one ball between hundreds
Mm.
or thousands of people, and there wasn't any rules or anything. You were just trying to pass it to the other side. And I was thinking of like some Twitch interactive game where you could pass them. I didn't think that was good. I just thought it was an interesting concept to go down. But the reason that's important is I had that in my mind for a while, but I figured I didn't have the means or the contacts to create that. And I
Mm-hmm.
figured it'd be done in the next 2 or 3 years.
Mm.
So 2 or 3 years pass. I meet my co-founder Nicolas at a kind of professionals event where he was doing a talk. Conversed with him, and that relationship took a while to build, so a couple of months or a year-ish, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But he eventually came to me early 2019 and presented to me these projects like for Twitch interactivity, so games that would live on Twitch
Mm.
and that you could only play exclusively on the platform. And uh, at the end, we connected a lot. I don't think the concepts themselves were necessarily that important. I think specifically with those concepts, I think the problem was that they presumed that 10,000 people magically appeared, which is a difficult challenge. But Nicolas was hungry to do things in the space, had a lot of experience in design and interactivity, and
Mm.
uh, my expertise, for whatever it's worth, was at least complementary. It was kind of adding on to what he had
Yeah.
in a different manner. So I'm much more focused on the community side, and he's much more focused on the creative process and in trying to find ideas from scratch. So it was a good interaction. That's why we decided to found the studio. Is
Mm-hmm.
we thought that we're both driven to do the same thing. We both wanted to explore that space. We both were fine with doing research, so we were more interested in the creative process and the research than the actual finished product. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that mindset made us apply to the Canada Media Fund,
Mm.
or yeah, Canada Media Fund, and we
Yeah.
got a grant. Sorry, a repayable advance. That's what it's technically called on the prototype. Basically, no, basically it allows us to make the project without having to worry for if it
Yeah.
fails, we don't lose out, right? Like if we succeed,
Oh,
we
that's
have to
good.
pay it back, but if we fail, we don't owe anything.
That's pretty
So
cool, actually.
yeah. So
Yeah.
actually, I'll present Canada Media Fund quickly because it's pretty important for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
developments in Canada. So about half of it is video games, the other half is film.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is you can pitch to them your project, which has to be innovative in some way, and interactive media. So video games fit in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can there's a bunch of programs. There's like free ones. If you're an aspiring designer, like really out of school at university, whatever, they have conceptualization, which is a very low key kind of you apply and you get it style thing. But
Right.
it caps at like $15,000. But like if you're starting out, that's great. The
Mm.
idea is to just create the thing and put it on paper.
Of course.
Then yeah, prototyping, which is what we got, which is up to 250. We got less. We asked for less,
Mm-hmm.
but it's basically we have this idea and we want to execute it and create something that embodies that idea, but it's
Yeah.
not like commercially viable yet or whatever. So that's what we applied for because it made
Mm.
sense. We're doing research, and obviously there's production, which is the big budget's up to 1.5, and that's like making
Mm-hmm.
the game, selling it, marketing, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah, we really did research. So we applied for the research part, like the prototyping. We got it, and even though we pitched a specific concept, we actually took a bunch of time. I'd say 4 to 5 months,
Mm-hmm.
where we were like looking at the landscape. Like we were doing game concepts to try things, but we weren't married to any of those ideas. It was more
Right.
about creating the company because the company was created as a result of getting that.
Mm.
Uh, Getting everything sorted, thinking about the research, like trying to go, okay, well, we're designing this from the ground up rather than adapting something. So how would we design a game that could only live on Twitch? As in, if you could only play it on Twitch, what would that game look like? And I think that was a big thing, was that we decided pretty early on that the game could not be played separately because that changes fundamentally the way you create and design the project.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and that's kind of why we founded the studio. Was we pitched for the money, and the money requires you to have a company, so we created a studio.
Well, that makes sense. I'm sure you're not the first to do it that way. So eventually you did hit upon a project. Can you describe Sea Raiders for someone who's never seen it?
Sure. So Sea Raider, the pitch line, I guess, it's a collaborative, pirate themed, lighthearted game that's exclusively playable on Twitch. There is a vision that we'd like it playable on other upcoming streaming platforms, but for now the tools only exist on Twitch, so that's why we're making it there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the idea is we wanted really something that's collaborative. So if you're playing Sea Raiders, you're working with the people. So you have to go on a live broadcast channel. So someone has to broadcast the game. That's critical to the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So they're playing the game on their channel, and then you as a viewer join the channel, and in a click you're in the adventure. So your avatar appears, it's on screen, live in the video, and you can edit your character. They're like kind of goofy-ish characters, so not super realistic. We decided like goofy was the way to go. There's too many people, too many things happening. It's much better, easier. So it's goofy in the sense that you can just change hats. You can have a parrot, very important for a pirate to have a bird.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do things together. So, for example, we have something where you go on the open seas to raid other ships, kind of against environment.
Mm-hmm.
But you can raid other ships for loot. If you are less about inclined to do those things, you can draw the pirate flag together, so everybody can paint on their flag by clicking on the screen. So, and that's the thing is, a lot of the Twitch interactive games you have to type in chat. With us, you don't have to. You just click on the video and everything works live. So as you click on the video, things happen. So when you have a group painting the flag, you're painting the flag literally, like you're clicking on the video to make something happen. And there's stuff I like, right? Like group fishing, partying together. So it's very much about the interaction between the person broadcasting, the viewers, and also among the viewers themselves. And we wanted to bring an experience that was comfortable for people that didn't want to interact in chat, but did want to interact nonetheless, right? Like typing can be a little bit daunting for some people, for actually a lot of people.
Yeah.
And just being able to click and interact directly with the ability for the broadcaster to highlight you if it happens is more where we want it to be.
That's kind of cool. So what phase of development is the game in?
So right now we're completing the prototype. So officially, our prototype is completed once we've done a live test on someone's external channel. That's like the official end of the prototype. I'd say the game as is pretty much prototype done. It's really certification of the extension on Twitch, which is a process. It's not too dissimilar to certification on consoles. It just happens a lot earlier for us than would make sense on a console or PC release. So that's the big thing, is making a test on an external channel. We have a few streamers that are interested that we're going to do that with. And that, as far as I'm concerned, the prototype exists. We can improve it, we can embellish it, we can make it better, but you can interact with it for sure.
So you're on, it's a playable prototype, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Playable prototype, yes.
So you're very, very, very early, maybe alpha or something even.
Yeah, alpha's the right state, right? Like private test, family, friends, and private test. So yeah, alpha. Like we're nearing that stage where it's, or pre-alpha, whatever. I don't even know where games are today. Today, like a beta is a full release. It doesn't make sense anymore.
Well, you know what? Honestly, it depends on the people making the game too. Like, so some studios have some terms and others have other terms, and you try to look it up and it's like, well, you call it that there, you don't call it that in the other place, so you never know. It's however you want to define it, basically.
Sure. I'm pretty hard line on the fact that even early access for me is a release, because at the end of the day, people can pay for your product.
Yeah.
I think those are like the differences, is like how close are you to your vision being realized? And people can purchase your product. That for me is a release, but we're way below that. I think we're at the state. Yeah, the thing is, the way we make it, we're trying to do a build every week, so like very small iterations. So we don't really have a alpha beta style process. I guess for me the steps I see are we can do it on a private channel, then we can do it on someone's external channel but controlled. Then it can be external channels that we choose but still are open to play, then open to play, and then commercially viable. whatever that means. But like that's how I see the steps. It's more how far along the project is and how easy to access it is.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, what about the Twitch platform appeals to you, and why is it ideal for your game?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the game only exists because of Twitch, I guess fundamentally. Um, no, but it's true.
Yeah.
One of the things is fundamentally our whole studio doesn't exist until live streaming of games became popular. It took a long time to get to
Hmm.
where we are today. Um, so how important it is? Yes, it's everything. It's lifeblood. But more on the side of what it allows from a, I guess, creative side is it allows us to do a type of game that wasn't it was kind of doable, but it's very difficult. It's like you don't
Hmm.
have to necessarily run it as much on a local machine. Like you don't have to download anything,
Mm.
and you can just play it watching the live video. And I think that's a very powerful tool that you can be visiting, and that's actually something I remember from RuneScape. Is that somebody could be visiting like their grandparent? Well, not now, but once it's safe to do. So if you're watching this a year down the line, you might be wondering, but yes, this was recorded in a time where visiting people was not a good idea. But fundamentally,
Yeah.
one of the things with web browser games, this
Mm.
is semi web browser, right? It's still it's different, but you can go to visit family and they have an older computer. You can
Hmm.
still play. You don't have to bring your high powered laptop. You don't need a specific setup. You're good to go. You can, and then the idea is it's doable on any device without us having to, like, we'd have to develop a mobile version. That's the tick there, but there's
Mm.
not, we don't have to force people to play on mobile. They can play the same experience that other people are playing on PC without us having to um, do anything specific or special.
Yeah.
They can just interact in the same space. And I think that's the thing is for us, Twitch is really about the kind of the gathering of people
Hmm.
in a digital space and in a community that, especially when you look at smaller streamers, a lot of them I feel have been left out and they don't get a lot of attention, but they're very active and energetic communities. It's like we're talking. I'm not even talking like the people that are ignored at 50 viewers, which already is a big milestone, like 50
Hmm.
concurrents. I'm talking like people with 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Like at the day, these people are probably playing with friends or very close contacts, and they deserve an experience that works, right? And like the reason that game streaming works is you can play from 0 to 100,000, and that's
Mm.
fine. 0 might be hard for what we do, but you can at least do 1. And I think that's important that from a perspective, I like the fact that you can interact on Twitch with like one broadcaster and one viewer and one broadcaster and 100,000. And I like the fact
Hmm.
that you can create an experience that fundamentally is coded the same, but plays differently with 10 people than it does with, let's say, 1,000 people, right?
Mm.
And like because with 10 people, it's about like you individually belong. What you do matters. I'll notice you, we'll do things together. And when you're 1,000, it's more about I'm part of the group, I'm doing things with the group. So while it's collaborative, it's separate. And I love the fact that the same platform and but different communities allow that. And I also love with Twitch that you're engaging with streamers that already have active communities. So we're already talking to people that have this problem of I have this community, we want to interact with one another. And sometimes that can be difficult. Not always, right? Like there are events and
Hmm.
stuff where it happens, but it can be difficult. It can be difficult to manufacture these moments more naturally, and that was a challenge we wanted to do. Is we felt that was a pain point of I want to interact with my community wants to interact with me, and our community also wants to interact with each other. I think that's why the discords have worked so well,
Yeah.
is because you go on a Discord and interact with other viewers, which I think at Twitch sometimes is very difficult to do.
Hmm.
And that's I think the best part about the Twitch experience and why we're developing for it is we saw that pain point of the viewers wanting to interact with each other as well,
Hmm.
and that the tools there are not good. I feel like
Yeah.
personally today they're not there. So that's where we wanted to develop as well is allow people to go like I'm not just watching someone and interacting with them. I also interact with other people that are doing the same thing, and I'm part of a shared experience. And I think that's the best part about I did say Twitch, but also like Facebook Live and YouTube Gaming, all those. Like just to be clear,
Hmm.
Twitch. The reason we went there is the tech. They have the tech for extensions. We can do it there. Mixer went down, so we can't do it there. While the other two don't. So, but the fact that there's this shared experience that people can come into was something we passionately care about.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I think that then, yeah, I mean, it definitely then you could say the that's where the Twitch say has an advantage for your game, say, as opposed to just making a multiplayer game that people can play on their phone or something like this, right? Which is also interactive, but not the way that your game is, I think.
Yeah, I think the shared experience part is very important. Yeah, that's I think the big difference is you can play it at home, but sometimes you can feel a little disconnected. Whereas with this, it's hard to feel disconnected. You see
Mm,
it, you can see what others are doing immediately without like let's take a battle royale game, right? There's 100 people, and you'll
hmm.
see points of interaction, right? You might interact with another user from time to time.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with streaming, you see zeitgeist effects. Like I saw a video on Fall Guys where they were like all going into the same lobby with the same color, and
Hmm.
basically they forced themselves in the same lobby and they started doing like drawing hearts with the characters. So they came to the finish line, they were organically drawing hearts because they
Yeah.
could see that shared experience, right? Because the people who were watching were joining the lobby at the same time on command and then
Mm,
doing the things on screen. So you could see emergent behavior where streamers want to do this already. The only thing we're trying to do is make it natively possible. That's I
yeah.
think the biggest difference with what we do is this stuff is emergent, and we want to shift it from emergent to native. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Are you going to have issues with lag? Is that like a big sort of part of your development?
Yeah, lag is a good question. No, I think it's fair. So that was
Yeah.
the one of our big research topics and concerns at the start. What we decided to do was we're going to design so that lag is not an issue.
Hmm.
Because if you port a game, you're going to have issues with lag.
Hmm.
So let's say you play something like there's an extension on Twitch called Crowd Control,
Hmm.
which allows you to hook. They have this vision to be usable on every game, but fundamentally for now it's
Right.
used on retro titles. So it plugs into a title like Zelda: Link to the Past, and you
Hmm.
can pay things to make things happen on screen. So
Mm,
extra rupees, kill the character, whatever. That works well. I actually have a lot of respect for that team. Um, the one thing with what they do is it works best on games that allow you to interact. So with Link to the Past, you can see things happening, right? So if you're going to like remove hearts or generate enemies 1 second or 5 seconds, it doesn't matter fundamentally. Like at the
right.
end of the day, the impact's there because the bot
Hmm.
fights take a while. Whereas if I took like Super Mario World, the level might be done, or it might not
Hmm.
matter, or it might be an auto scroller and it's just irrelevant. So like the pacing of the games it applies to uh, changes how good the experience is. And uh, my view is we have to design it in that way where the lag doesn't matter. Like obviously, if you're 30 seconds behind or something, it might. So
Hmm.
we were looking. We don't have that in the prototype yet. We were looking at having specific roles for people that had very high latency. So if they were above 20 or 30 seconds, have something that doesn't require them to interact specifically live. So it's something like they because
Hmm.
there's an extension, right? The extension has no lag.
Right.
So the extension's local, like what do you see?
Yeah.
So you can put something there, and then what happens in the video happens whenever. So if you have
Hmm.
like a healer role, which isn't context dependent, and all you have to do is like a mini game where you end up healing,
Hmm.
then it doesn't matter if you're delayed too much because
Right.
you're in the process of healing. So I think lag is an issue if you don't design for it for like 100%.
Hmm.
But we're just trying to design so that it doesn't matter, right? Like if you're drawing something, it's a little longer. If you're fishing, it doesn't matter because you're there. So doing sessions that are a couple of minutes in length that don't have very time sensitive actions or even close to that, essentially.
Mm.
Because if
Oh,
you
that's cool.
change, yeah, that's the idea. If you
Yeah.
change a hat on your character, whether it takes 2 seconds or 30, isn't too bad.
Yeah. But if you're all involved in, say, a battle
Yeah.
where everybody's contribution counts, then lag could get annoying.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So we with our battle system, what we try to do is have it closer to Pokemon in a sense. So it's
Hmm.
a positional system where you can shift your position and you try to be more effective against your opponent. So the idea is there's three positions and the AI will shift. So you have to match
Mm.
the AI.
Okay.
Um, but we're trying to make the AI pacing not too fast so that you can shift.
Hmm.
Um, we're trying to give a privileged position, so you can choose a position from the start that you're better in naturally. So
Hmm.
even if you don't move, you're already doing very good work in that position.
Hmm.
Um, and trying to do it in a way where we're also trying to think on like how the damage could work. Like if you input the damage during a boost, even though you're delayed, maybe that damage still works. Like we're trying to figure out little things like that where you're not punished for latency. I think it's
Mm.
like you can see the delay and that's not great. So we have to
Hmm.
consider that. but we wanted to make sure that people were, people could be passive for another issue actually, which is that people who watch don't necessarily want to interact.
Yeah.
Our view is, if we're lucky and our game is very, very good by design and all that, I think the best we could achieve on anything that's a largest stream would be 60 to 70% of people interacting. Because a lot of people just can't. They don't want to. They're watching Twitch while they're cooking, or they're taking a bath, or they're relaxing, or they're on the phone in the subway, and it's a little hard to do it. Or it's at work. Like they might have the screen at work.
Yeah.
So we're trying to design little things for those people where you literally click once to engage, and then you can let it run. But you can see your screen and you can see your character move and do things. So, and those have no latency. So we have a fishing mini game, right, where it's interactive, but we're trying to we designed it specifically so that it has two modes. The first mode is fish actively, and the second mode is you don't fish. You just put a net, and then at the end of the fishing, you just got some fishes. So it's really for, like, for example, the person who's working and focusing on their task but wants to be part of a community. So they can have it open in a window or something. They're doing that. And while that's happening, they're doing whatever else they wanted to do, like they had to do or wanted to do. And it might seem weird, but it helps it still has the person engaged and taking a part in the community. And that's important. There are people who just don't want to interact, so you need to design for those people.
No, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you have to design for the platform, which means you have to think about how people behave on the platform.
Right. Yeah. I think it brings a lot of counterintuitive viewpoints to design for Twitch, because all of a sudden you're thinking of questions like, okay, what do we do for people who don't want to interact or engage? Well, they want to engage. Sorry, that's poor. But they don't want to interact, right? They don't want to, like, actively do things. Whereas all the games are like, okay, how can we make sure the player's interacting? We have this exercise where it's like, okay, how do we make sure the person's comfortable engaging without needing to interact? Which is not something. I like those exercises because a normal game wouldn't think about these things. It's not a concern or valuable, even if you thought about it.
That's pretty cool. So what's your biggest hope for the game?
Well, there's a lot of different hopes. I guess haven't mentioned all that. No, I'm joking. Although it'd be nice, I guess. All those jokes aside, honestly, for me right now, there's the fundamentally pressing issue of I'd like to produce it and make it happen. But for me, from a hope vision standpoint, what I do honestly care about is if I'd love to see the game be something where people can engage and interact with and feel a part of a community in a way that was quite distinct from what happened before. If we can find, if the game manages to create a new way to engage as a community, that for me would be an amazing achievement, because I personally grew up on online communities, and they gave me a lot of respect for other cultures. They gave me a lot of respect for other people, like learning how to interact with others. They taught me the value of, being there on time, because the other person doesn't see you. So if you don't show up digitally, like, it's very cold shoulder. So it brought me that value of online events as well, of interacting with others, of a lot of factors that would matter, like age or others not mattering as much. I by the way, I know the digital spaces are pretty harsh towards, let's say, for example, persons of color, women, etc.
Yeah.
Which is another horrible topic, but I mean, it's an important topic rather than horrible. The treatment is horrible.
Well, it's a horrible, important topic.
Yeah, right. That's, I guess, the way. But fundamentally, before, like, what, back when it was avatars and like not very characteristic, there were a lot of less of these issues because these characteristics didn't come up. But anyways, yeah. But it's this idea of online communities allowing people to engage and be, not part of a second family. That's like the best possible hope, but it's more a social club, right? Like those can be hard to get into. So being able to like for me, a hope for the game is you go online, you go to the streamer for that day, maybe there's another, and you're part of that social club, you're interacting with others that you've seen before. You feel comfortable with engaging, and even for me, even without chatting, that person feels part of something greater than themselves, even though they've never chatted, they may not have been specifically noticed, they're just there and they're present and they're engaged, but that brings value to their life. That's for me the hope of the game, is for people who can't today come out of their digital shells, because I think that can be difficult and sometimes not advisable.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and bringing and being able to have them feel part of something in general, just being part of
Yeah.
something.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a very good hope.
Thank you.
Okay. What is something you wish you'd known about game development and the game industry before you got into it?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good one. I guess things change, so there are some things that I don't need the answer to anymore or wouldn't want
Mm-hmm.
it to. Um, it's interesting because the game industry changes so fast. I've been in it 10 years, and that's already considered long term, which is uh,
Yeah, it
something
is.
else.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a lot of people burn out and quit. I think with reason in a lot of those scenarios, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing, the thing I would have liked to know about the industry is I kind of learned it on the fly, and I didn't do so badly as a result of it because I had good supportive people at the time. So like the things that might have made me burn out and leave were thankfully at the same time as some of the better human beings I've had the chance to interact with in my life. Uh, an extremely supportive manager and other senior member of staff who took care of somebody abusive was very important actually to a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people. But the thing I would want to learn apart, like those are like the dark areas of the industry, but it's more about before you get in, try to picture what you're trying to do in it. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, fine, you want to be like, say, a 2D artist. Like, yes, that's a functional thing you want to do. Like, no question about it. If you want to be a 2D artist, there's going to be something out there for you.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're competent and you work decently, you'll find something. Uh, the thing I want people though to figure out before they, like, I would have liked to learn before going in there is um, try to plan out things as much as you can, because even if you do end up in a company that respects you and takes care of you, at the end of the day a lot of companies can be ephemeral because I mean fundamentally, for example, us, we're based on one project
Yeah,
fails, okay, well, yeah, thank you.
exactly. Mm.
And even though they might be great human beings and help you and support you, they may not be able to. So I think it's important to learn before you go in, like what do you want to do. So one thing at my first job at Jagex that I told myself very early on when I got there was, okay, I have to keep learning every day,
Mm.
or I have to be on track for promotion. Because if neither of those is true, why am I here? But I only learned that a little bit down the line. And if I was told that before of thinking about those goals, it might have been a little better because I would have thought
Mm-hmm.
very proactively about, okay, what is it I care about? Okay, I care about learning, for example. Like, say for a year or two, I'm not fussed on the exact work I'm doing. The pay is less important, but I'm fundamentally focused on, say, learning how to interact with people or learning how to improve my written communication. Or it can just be the human side of things. Of I've never really felt comfortable on a larger project. I'd like to work on a larger project and just be part of something because then I have that under my belt and then I feel comfortable
Mm-hmm.
humanely that I've done something great. Um, because if I had taught to tell myself these objectives a lot earlier, um, I would have made sure that in the steps where it would have been dangerous, I would have kept that self respect to myself and always kept on track.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I would want to know is learn what your limits are, because there are people who will unfortunately take advantage of it. Because uh, for better or worse in other jobs, right? Like say you go to a bank, it's 9 to 5. There's only so much abuse someone can do to you that goes beyond 9 to 5. Because if you're just working there, say as a clerk, you show up on time, you do your job, you leave. You need like a horrible human being can exist, but
Mm-hmm.
there's only so much room in your work itself to make it a miserable experience.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas with games, there's a lot of room to make a lot of horrible things happen to you because
Mm-hmm.
uh, deadlines exist, quality control it varies greatly. There's promotions can be haphazard and guesswork a lot of time and not set. So because there's a lot of loose in the games industry, you have to accept that sometimes you're gonna have to ride with it, and sometimes you shouldn't. You should learn to say
Mm-hmm.
stop and accept. And one of the best lessons my dad taught me is don't leave without something else, but do plan to leave. as in look up for something else, and then when you have that, go out. But like
Yeah.
plan for something else. Always plan. And I think if you go in the industry, plan ahead, because
Hmm.
the company itself won't or can't necessarily do that for you. So do it to yourself and give yourself that respect of the planning ahead, because otherwise
Hmm.
you're going to burn and leave.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's very true. So, on the subject of stress and deadlines, how do you cope with that in your work
Um.
when things just aren't working out?
Oh, when things aren't working out, that's a better question.
Well, I mean, you're pretty early on. Have you had to deal with any tight deadlines yet, or any kind of crunch?
We actually specifically told ourselves not to get into it
Hmm.
because we're in prototyping.
Yeah.
So I think with production, I think crunch is avoidable in production if you have a good producer and some thought process in advance.
Yep.
We're not necessarily, but we're not there. So thankfully, we can avoid that problem for now. We might have to go into it, but not for now.
Hmm.
But in prototyping, at the end of the day, we're researching, right? So
Hmm.
we did have some deadlines, like events come up and you have to do something, and there might be a peak in activity, but I never felt I was overworking. Um, my co-founder works pretty hard and sometimes overworks, but he's overworking not for a deadline. He's overworking because he cares about like a specific aspect of the project or yet an idea that he wants to see the implementation of.
Yeah.
So to answer that question on deadlines, we kind of designed ourselves to be away from that research, to
Hmm.
stick in that research step and not force ourselves on a tight deadline. We do have like a deadline of money, like at some point it runs out,
Hmm.
and we do have to, there is some time pressure, but it's not a like fundamentally there's not a date where I can tell you this is catastrophic if X doesn't happen by then.
Right.
Um, so what we do is when there's an event, when there's a deadline, we plan ahead and we do it as much in advance as possible because we don't have other deadlines. So it makes sense
Hmm.
to prepare for it as much in
It's
advance as
good. Yep.
possible. Yeah. That allows us to manage the stress. I guess we also try to take steps back regularly. So the fishing game actually the painting of the flag actually came from taking a step back,
Mm.
because we had our first play test with people and they were talking about the combat a lot. And we were a little concerned because we wanted something a little more social and we're talking exclusively about the combat. So we were wondering what was going on there.
Hmm.
And, and we figured there's actually not something social that they want to interact with.
Right.
So we took that step back. And I think the way we try to manage the stress is when a problem comes that we don't have an immediate answer for, we stop, discuss it, think about it, and do something about it. And that helps manage the stress greatly because then,
Hmm.
um, yeah, it helps a lot. I think there's like more fundamental worries, right? About like, oh, I want to produce my game. I need the funding at some point, or
Hmm.
at least the business partner that can interact in that sense. So that's like, long term. Well, I'm not sure about the future style things, but it's not
Yeah.
a immediate worry or super stressful. Because at the end of the day, even let's say worst case scenario, we don't have any more cash. Okay, we have a functional prototype. I can still pay my rent and buy food. My co-founder can do the same. And we still have something that exists, a product. So we don't have to
Hmm.
shut down things. We can just slow down and keep finding those things. So we try to ourselves up in the best possible way to avoid the stress of deadlines, unless we
Hmm.
decide to go into it. So, okay, this event's important. We'd like to go into it.
Mm.
Okay, we got to create access, do Y thing. Okay, then we'll put energy. But
Yeah.
try to keep it to positive stress, right? Like, there's a term for it. It's not quite energetic. I'm trying to find the right term for it. There's like you're buzzing, you're shaking, but like in the right way. I'm not sure the right term. It's escaping me, but
I don't
it's like
know.
it's positive stress essentially. It's
Yeah.
this idea of yes, this is high energy. Yes, this is a little exciting, and I'm not sure about how it's going to end up, but it's for a good cause. It can't go that badly, and I want to do the
Mm.
best I can. So yeah.
That makes sense. I think that's probably a good approach
We try our
because you get,
best.
yeah. Um, what is your favorite aspect of making games?
Um, I really like design sessions because I get to work with a co-founder who's been in the industry for 30 years. and he's seen a lot of awful stuff. So, but I like just the fundamental research process, honestly. For me, the taking a step back and like reassessing what others have done is, I think, so valuable and so rare to see elsewhere, because people don't take the time to do that. Like they'll see one thing and then they'll just go with it. Um, Whereas we have the chance to work on a brand new space, so we got the chance to really look at all the project in the space because there's not a ton. We got a chance to see all the interviews in the space because, again, there's not a ton of material. So
It's true.
because not so much material out there, we could like literally look at the wealth of data out there without missing a beat. And reassess how people view things. My favorite thing is to do something in games which others have just missed. Not that's necessarily the best thing to do, but it's just something that you spot that others have just not seen the opportunity, or even like they just didn't see the value, and you expand it. So, for example, I think small streamers aren't looked at properly, and one or two people have engaged with them, and they've reaped insane rewards out of that process, actually. And I love the fact that I get to talk to a streamer, any streamer we onboard for now, like into the playtest, is almost an hour and a half to 2 hours of my time, between and their time too, in a way. So like between contacting them, talking to them out of the project and what we're hoping for and what we're trying to develop, getting them in the playtest and getting feedback. So like that feedback process is long per person, but it's worth it because I'm interacting with people who have their own hopes, their own dreams, their own goals, and I get to interact what we're creating in games with what they're trying to do personally as individuals. So that's what I really am liking, that in games, that research, that personal approach rather than just going back to data, etc. It's just that, as in, I like the quality. I guess to resume it, I like the qualitative much more than the quantitative, because it's much more human, it's much more personal, and I think there's a lot to learn in the space. And qualitative data, especially spoken, as in verbal, nonverbal communication, qualitative data, is very hard for people to kind of perceive and integrate. It's very easy to look at numbers in a spreadsheet once you have the knowledge and make an assessment comparatively, because talking to people and getting their feedback and understanding not just what they're saying, but also why they're saying it, where they're coming from, and what you should try to do as a result, is, I think, very difficult. But I love that in games, that at the end of the day, people want to have fun, they want to engage, they want to interact, and you need to, and you want to understand why, and they do it because of who they are as a person. So being able to interact in that space, to me, is super fascinating.
That's awesome. Do you have a least favorite? Anything that frustrates you?
Anything to do with accounting, taxes, credits. So the thing they don't tell you when you're a studio founder, and here, okay, so if any of you out there are like, oh yeah, this sounds cool, I want to make my own thing. Okay, so here's the thing. First, have rich. No, I'm joking. No, although some background money doesn't actually hurt you. If you don't have, that's actually, it's a bit weird, right, to talk about discrimination here, but it makes sense in the sense that, like, if you come from a poor background or the unfavorable one, you're more often going to not have pocket money. That's why actually a lot of entrepreneurs are more likely to either be from wealthy upbringings, or like my co-founder, not necessarily wealthy upbringing, but he worked at Ubisoft as a creative director, so he has some money in the bank at at his age. And that's the thing; it's like having money in the bank. But yes, least favorite part of games. Although, warning, you need to learn this stuff, because if you don't, as a studio founder, you're gonna suffer the consequences. And I can think of at least one decision we made that I would like to retract, but might have trouble doing it. Hopefully we can, but it's, you have to learn how the financial side works, because there's so much government help, tax credits in Canada for sure. Like in Canada specifically, there's a lot of this stuff, but you need to learn as well. Make sure that the employees are paid properly for their holiday pay and all that stuff. Like all of that stuff is super unfun. It's very uninteresting to me, but it's critical in games because other businesses, because they're more, I think, I guess, quote unquote serious is the wrong term to put, but a lot of the times you're focused on the creative process, and the accounting is often a very uncreative side of things. well, hopefully it's uncreative. I don't creative accounting is another thing. But there's a lot of it that can fundamentally destroy a project or make it
Hmm.
succeed. Um, it's definitely my least favorite part. If I was going to talk about an actual game focused thing, um, let's see. Because at the end of the day, like I work in marketing and community because I enjoy those aspects. I try not to work in aspects I don't like. Um, it's difficult. I guess things I don't enjoy in games are anything that feels like forced. I guess is the way to put it.
Hmm.
So I don't like working a lot on we have to do this style projects, but that are not driven by creative processes, but that are driven by okay, well, if we don't do this, the build's going to crash. We have to do it. So anything that's like has to do with not having the house burned down. That's
Hmm.
just the way to put it. The accounting, a lot of the yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's maybe a boring answer and a more
Hmm.
standard answer. But yeah,
No,
that's
but
just
it
something.
makes sense. I
Yeah,
mean, there's a reason why people hire accountants and stuff for those kinds of things. But even then, you gotta have an idea of what they're doing. Otherwise, you don't know if you're getting good work.
no, right, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And there's a lot of random helps that can exist if you don't look at this stuff. You can so for example, something we're not using this, but like something we looked
Hmm.
at a while back when we are thinking of hiring, but now we can get the next step. But anyways,
Mm.
is for example, there's I think something in Quebec, but I'm not 100% sure if it's Quebec or Canadian. I think it's
Hmm.
Quebec, where if you hire someone who's either in an unfavored group, which is a strange term, but anyways, or a
Sounds like a
recent
very Quebec term, though.
yes,
Yes.
or a recent immigrant, you can
Hmm.
get help from subsidy for their a part of their salary
Okay.
for a while. So that's the type of thing that can help. For example, a lot of studios are talking, oh, we want diversity. Diversity is encouraged. A lot of the time when I
Hmm.
read that, I don't believe a word that's written on the piece of paper. But there are people who genuinely want this. And this
Hmm.
is the type of thing where you can have that extra hire, which can help the shift. But you need to research this stuff. If you don't research it, then you don't know this exists. And then biases might come into play because you're like, oh, this person has more experience, so I should take them.
Hmm.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's also one a pet peeve in games is, oh, we want so many years of experience. Because I have 10 and other people I know have tons. Oh, who cares? All I want is somebody to come, interact, want to be creative, and is passionate and knows what they're
It's
doing.
true.
Like whether you
I
work
know.
5 years or 6 months, or even if you're new, who
Yeah.
cares? I want to see what you can do. That's much more
No, I
important.
know. In video game industry, like at least job listings definitely have that sort of catch-22 problem. They want the person that just left kind of thing. And
Yes.
it's like, well, the
No.
person who just left went somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is there's a lot of because video games are a passion industry. A lot of people's kind of lower what they want,
Mm.
below what they want. So you're kind of forced to compete with other people who have the same thing.
Mhm.
Um, so oh yeah, that was something I hated back at my first job. Was any political game was just it just destroyed projects anyways. But
Mhm.
that's not specific to games, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I remember like just having a stint of a few months where I didn't have work, and it was impossible to find a job because people are like, oh, you haven't worked for 6 months. This isn't your damaged goods. Essentially, I'm just like, okay. I haven't lost expertise. As far as I know, I'm still the same person. I just decided not to work for a few months,
Mm.
and I think that's the. But that's and the problem in games with that is that other industries will have longer placing jobs. So even if you're off for a little bit, it's less of a damage there because you have less applicants per job. So
Right.
you end up in this position where, well, you have six people, like, okay, fine, you were away for 6 months, what have you done? And you're like, I try to pick myself up, I did an online course. Like it's a lot easier.
Mhm.
When you have 100 candidates, they just go like, okay, I've been gone this person's gone 6 months. Like, whatever. I have 100 candidates, I don't know how to call this, so I'm just going to put whatever random criteria I have,
Mm.
and then these people are gone. So actually, there we go. I have a good answer for what I hate the most in games is the disregard for um, human well-being and a lot of how people interact, engage in the industry. Not everybody, a
Mhm.
lot of people do care, but I see it often enough that it is harmful.
No, it's very true. It's the kind of thing that I think is being talked about more, so that's good. But it's going to take a while before it really gets fixed, I
Oh
think.
no,
Yeah.
it'll take the time it
Everything like,
takes. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
All right. We've talked about a lot of stuff already, but do you have any more advice for people starting out in indie development?
yeah. Um, Execution matters a lot more than
Mm,
ideas. I think you'll have heard that one before.
mhm,
I'll reiterate it. Uh, I don't know if you necessarily need a prototype. Investment in the way games works are weird, but if you're trying, let's say you're trying to get in it. So if you're trying to get into indie development, a lot of my answer presumes that you probably are fresher in the sense of like you've come out of studies probably. But I want to address this as well to people who would be interested in shifting because I think some of not that there's anything wrong, obviously, with graduating and going into games. That's great, by the way. Sorry, but I did want to point out that there are a few people that are outside of games that want to shift in. They've worked a couple of years elsewhere, and they want to shift into games because it's something they care about and they're passionate about. And indie development might make sense to them because they see it as something smaller scale that they can have more control over.
mm,
So I think the thing with indie development that's good is you have more control. So it you can there's more of what you do in the creative process. I mean, I work in community marketing fundamentally, but I have a
mhm,
ton of design input on the project we're making.
mm,
Uh, and even if I wasn't a co-founder, that might still be the case because we're a very, very small amount of individuals, right? So if I see, for example, a problem, I have to talk to one person that respects me to get the problem fixed,
mhm,
or talked about, or discussed, or what do we do? And I think if you want to get into indie development, that should be your highlight. Is I either want to have a vision myself or subscribe to the vision of someone else who I trust. I trust their vision. I trust that person. And I want to bring it to life. And I want something, I want to get into something creative. So fundamentally, you're going into it because your motivation is smaller scale, something creative, something that you can help control, and that you can see your work in it without having it be disconnected by four layers of management. Or okay, look, there's 500 people there. You're going to do like the attack animations on this very specific section. You're like, okay, well, sure.
mm.
No, but you're probably the one artist or one of two.
Yeah.
So you're going to see your work. Your work is there. Like the game is
Mhm.
out. That's your art,
It's true.
right? Yeah, and I think no matter what, that can't be taken away from you. The game could sell zero. It's still on marketplace. It still has your art. You can still say that was me.
Mhm,
I think that should be your biggest motivator going into it. Uh, and the advice I'm going to give is two-part on this. The first one is don't let that go. As in,
mm,
remember why you're there. If you waver on that, it's because you probably decided that maybe it wasn't something you wanted to do. And I think that's fine to evolve. Just realize and be respectful of the people involved.
mhm,
But if you like, it can be hard in the middle parts of the process because it's not the start where everything's exciting. It's not the end where you're selling units, or if it's a free to play game, selling hats or cosmetics or whatever.
mhm,
It's like that middle section where we kind of did things and we need to go somewhere, but there's a lot to do. And like doing very small tasks sets, like
mhm,
every week I'm going to do a little something. Like, okay, this week I'm going to draw like the character's scarf. Like that's a very tangible, must be done thing that can be done in a smaller scale, and that
mhm,
can help you feel motivated to do like these smaller tasks. And at the end, it'll look a lot more detailed and polished than you can believe.
mm,
And that helps you like subscribe to that vision and keep that motivation going. So I think that's one thing is make sure you're keeping that motivation going. If you lose it, question why. If it's the creative process itself, that's okay. Try to find a way. If it's that you no longer subscribe, maybe indie development's not for you. That's fine. You should go elsewhere. I don't have an issue with that. The second thing is make sure you keep your respect.
mhm,
Whatever you go into, I so I love indie development. There are some individuals out there that I have less respect for than others. I'll put it that way, um, because I see them. Uh, Underpay is usually the thing that gets shown out, but I really mean under respect.
Mm-hmm.
Underpay is a fundamental problem where, like, if you can't pay rent and food, that you probably shouldn't do it. Is
Mm-hmm.
unless you're studying or it's something else. Like, make sure you're getting some form of respect slash and compensation for what you're doing. If you're
Mm-hmm.
jumping into someone else's vision, if you're doing your own vision, be very like your mindset should be, if I'm investing any money into this and it literally incinerates in front of my eyes, I have
Mm-hmm.
to be okay with it. I know I'm gonna bring poker into this quickly because I played poker, and then one thing I told myself is any money on this in poker it has to vanish, and I literally cannot care. Like, I might be
Mm-hmm.
sad or like, oh, I wish I didn't lose it, but like, I cannot care. Like, that money
Right.
can never have been anything that connects to a living standard.
It's true.
Uh, yeah, and I think in indie games it's the same. If you're gonna fund something yourself, make sure that you're not like, I see people like putting their house on mortgage. No, just do not do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Most indie games will not succeed. It is commercially. So like, your game
Yep.
might succeed in other ways. It might be a cool artistic project. You might get notoriety. It might give you the energy to make a second game that's going to be more commercially successful. There's a lot of ways to
Mm-hmm.
succeed that aren't making money right away. Uh, but I would not get into indie development with my own money. If I did put my own cash in a company, but I know that
Yep.
if the company goes there, we make nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not destitute. I still have a roof. I still have things. I'm not in trouble.
Right.
Uh, yeah, and if you're working for someone, make sure it's someone that you're going to get underpaid compared to anything else you could be doing, because you're talking to people who have less means in an
Mm-hmm.
industry of passion. Yeah, but make sure you at least get respect, and make sure
Mm-hmm.
that what's asked of you is reasonable and on point. As in,
Mm-hmm.
somebody is like, look, work, like, okay, fine. You're like, let's say you're an artist, a mother with kids, right? And you wanted to convert into games. Uh, Maybe the agreement with them is work 25 or 30 hours a week, and they allow you to see your kids, and they're never going to ask you to work crunch. There is this vision that games are very crunch heavy and all that. There are actually a lot of indie studios that respect people and don't require these things.
Mm-hmm.
They might require them for a week or two max, but they don't fundamentally do. And seek out those people. Like, it's okay to have respect for your own life and go into indie development. They're not incompatible to each other. I myself work part time
Mm.
because I work in community marketing. There's not a justification to work full time right now, so I work
Yeah.
part time to help the company stretch a little longer, and
Mm-hmm.
because it helps my mental energy. I can spend better energy with the people I interact with, and I can do better projects. The work smart, not hard thing. The
Yeah.
first 2 hours of work a day are just worth way more than any hour in the day. So yeah, I think there's a lot there, I think, but make sure if you're going into indie development, you understand why you're doing it. Even if it's curiosity, ask
Mm-hmm.
yourself, don't jump into anything, research the people. And sometimes, and a lot of the times, like, the info is not available online. Talk to them, ask what their vision is, ask what they care about. And if it doesn't align with what you do, be careful.
Yep. No, that makes sense. I think that's very good advice for anyone really,
Yeah.
but especially for indie development.
Mm.
So, Eduardo, what is up next for Sea Raiders?
Sure. Well, I wish I knew that. No, sure. No, so the next stuff is, we did mix. We did some demos with industry people. So
Mhm.
in the background, we're talking to business partners. That's a combination of potential people who want to invest in the production, and others that literally are just strategic partners, like people that we love to interact with. They're working in similar spaces, and we can do things together.
Mhm.
Which isn't just a commercial transaction. It's like the success of one will help the success of the other. So
Mm.
I was actually surprised by how many of people actually fit into that category.
Mhm.
So that was the nice thing with Sea Raiders, was working with a lot more people that were interacting in the similar space and wanted to go in the same direction, but we're not. We essentially aren't competitive, so we could collaborate a lot more with different companies.
Mhm.
Um, and that was actually one of the parts of the product that I think is the best, and I'm hoping that finalizes and having something great that comes out, like a cool product.
Mhm.
And I think the next big things are, we're trying to set up the public demos, so demos that are
Mhm.
playable on someone else's channel. I think that's like the big milestone for the project, is that demo that you can play on someone's channel without us having to invite you, and you can tune in, check it out, play it. I think that's the
Mhm.
next big step for Sea Raiders. Um, And after that, it's us figuring out, okay, how can we shift from we made this cool prototype to, all right, okay, how can we polish this, make the whole game like what looks like a proper full game? That's, I think, then the next step is like figuring that part out. But for now, really, we're focused on how can we make the public demos happen, and how can we make. I think for C Raiders, we're pretty happy with where the prototype is. So it is really like showing it to a wider world, and then developing it long term. I think those are the next things for it.
That's awesome. So how can people find out more about you and your studio?
It's a good question because we're very invisible. So we specifically don't really have SNS or social media accounts. We have a Facebook one. You're welcome to join it. Watcha Games. LinkedIn as well. So we're still pretty business focused right now. A streamer can talk to me any way you want. You can find me personally on Twitter, Walla Oompa, or Eduardo Sajgalik. Wherever you can find me, you can talk to me. You're probably good.
We'll have links to everything we can in the description down here.
But if you're interested, talk to me. You can talk to my colleague Nicolas Epert. If you're more on if you want to talk more creative vision, tech, he's also much more French than I. Like, we're both French and Canadian, but he's much more, very apparently French. So si vous parlez français, c'est parfait pour aller par là. So, I'd say like probably talk to myself, Eduardo Sajgalik, or Nicolas Epert, my co-founder, rather than the company itself, because we're pretty much the company as stands. Down the line, I guess the Facebook page, not necessarily something we're going to super expand, but one of the things is the best way to find out about us is probably going to be to watch streamers that stream our game. Because we're going to focus so much on wanting to interact with streamers. And if you're a streamer, talk to us. We have a private Discord for now where we do play tests. So if people want to find out more about us, really just get in touch. The project, will talk about it as info comes out. But probably you're going to have to keep a close eye out on Twitch to see what comes out. We're going to fly semi under the radar, so it's more up to you to try to find the little nugget of information than us to show it for now.
Do you guys have a Twitch channel of your own?
We do, but it's actually private. But there's a reason for that. One of the vision aspects is because we wanted a game that was playable by streamers and solely by streamers, we also realized we can't have our own channel outside of test purposes because we don't want to take people away from a content creator as a fundamental vision. So it's fine for tests, but we don't want to attract people away from people creating content that you should follow. So that's so we do have a Twitch account, but it's hidden. However, if you're interested in a demo, let us know and you might find out what that is.
All right. Well, that's cool. Thank you, Eduardo.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been Everyday Expertise. Bye.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this interview. Be sure to share this video with friends and colleagues who may also enjoy this topic. Let us know your thoughts by leaving a comment below or check the description for our social media. See you next time.